Greetings, and welcome to Terra Incognita. This segment of 7-Minute Max will focus on 3ds Max's snapping functionality. First off, let's take a look at the ways you could access Snap. Under the Tools menu, we will find the Grids and Snaps pull-out, which will access Grids and Snap settings, and also note some of the useful shortcuts. On the main toolbar, we could find the 3 Snaps toggles. And we could think of these as applicable to our 3 manipulation modes: translation, rotation, and scaling snaps. If we left click on the and hold on the translation snaps, we could see alternate modes, which we will cover in a bit. But for now, let's leave it at 3D snaps. Right-clicking any toggle button calls up the Grid and Snap setting dialog. This box is non-modal, so you could leave it open while you work. You can also call up a Snaps toolbar by right-clicking in any empty area of the main toolbar. Or you could shift right-click in the viewport to call up a hot menu. I'm just going to leave the Grid and Snap settings dialog open. The first 2 tabs of this interface are what are relevant to us for the moment. Under the Snaps tab, we have checkboxes for a dozen different snapping behaviors. And notice that the pull-down menu changes the options for other object types you may find yourself working with. So if, for example, you import a object from Inventor and notice that it's a body object, make a mental note that this is where you will change the snapping behavior to respond to that object type accurately. I'm going to activate vertex and midpoint snapping for now. On the Options tab, we have settings for the physical display of the marker and its size. This is the icon that you see when you hover over an active snapping point. Here we could control the size of the icon, and the checkbox will control whether it's visible at all. The next 2 options relate to one another. The Snap Preview Radius is the distance in which Max is going to start looking for a potential snap target. There it is. I'm within 30 pixels, so it's starting to look at what the active snaps are that it could snap to. The snap radius is the distance in which Max will physically take control of the object. Let's zoom in for a little closer look at that. Max will physically take control of the object and snap it to the active snapping point that is previewing. Now, down here we have the angle and percent settings, which set the snapping intervals for our angle snap and percent snaps respectively. Let's turn those on. Angle snap, percent snap. I'm going to choose the rotate tool, and we could see this rotating in the box. You could see it calling out 5-degree increments that it's rotating. We could see that the scaling interval is an even 5. On the lower right corner of the screen under Z, you could see that it's going up by even 10% increments. Notice that while these snap modes are on, I'm just going to pull over another box, that we're not getting tracking anymore. No snaps are being called out. My vertex and my midpoint, which I have active, aren't being found as I'm rotating or scaling objects. So we can't track the angle or scale of one object relative to another. And that seems like a shame to me, but I'll show you a workaround for how to do this with other tools in Max in another video. Now, the final 2 settings in our Grid and Snap settings dialog, the display rubber band. The rubber band is the little yellow line that appears going from the origin of the snap to the destination of the snap. And you could control its visibility here. And finally, we have the Access Constraints toggle. I covered access constraints in another video, so if you're not totally comfortable with them, that is certainly worth another 7 minutes of your time. With access constraints active, I can actually infer the snapping point of an object in relation to any other snappable object or even its coordinate system. Let's go back to the Snaps menu. I'm going to activate face snapping as well. As you have more snaps active, you may find the cursor behavior gets a little busy. And here, a really useful key combination is Alt-S. So pressing that once, Alt-S, notice that this box that previously said Override Off now indicates one of the active snap options. And for one click, that is the only snap option that will be recognized. So now my cursor is only finding the vertex snaps Pressing Alt-S again will toggle to the next active snap option I have checked in my checklist. From the Shift right-click menu, you could even select None, which effectively turns snapping off for one click. Once you have made that first click, the override turns back to off. And you have the option to use it again to limit the destination snap as long as you don't release your mouse. So here I'm going to press Alt-S again to limit my snapping to vertex. I'm going to click my left mouse button and hold it down. Without releasing, I'll press Alt-S again to enact the override. And now I'm only finding vertexes in my snap targets as well. In our last couple of minutes, let's look at the two other snap modes, and let's switch the mode to 2D snap. I find this most useful when drawing lines. So the only snap I have active right now is the vertex snap. And the 2D snap mode will only snap to points that lie on the active plane. Right now my home grid is active, so the snapping is finding any point that lies on that plane. Apparently not that, because it's beneath the plane. This one over here should be on the plane. We'll close it off. This is really useful if you're tracing a CAD drawing and you want to make sure that you don't hit any points that are actually elevated in the drawing that you might not be expecting. Now the 2.5D snap mode takes that to the next level. Let's set it to 2.5D. I'm going to draw a helper grid. Let's make it 100. 100. And I want to make this grid active. Now the 2.5D snaps work by limiting your drawing to the plane, and here I've changed my home grid to this user grid I've made and made it active, so I'm going to draw on this plane, and the snaps will snap to objects beyond the plane. However, it will limit the drawing to the plane. So that's where you're getting the 2.5D moniker. You're drawing in 2 dimensions. However, your snapping is in 3 dimensions. So you get 0.5D, I guess. But this is a surprisingly useful feature for tracing profiles of objects or maybe slicing a profile out of an existing object. I hope this overview has either refreshed or supplemented your knowledge of Max's snapping interface. Until next time, peace.